And welcome back, everybody, to the Podcaster Nation. That's right. I said welcome back because I know you were just listening to our stuff and you loved us so much that you came back for more. Folks, that was a brilliant decision. It really, really was. And I'm going to tell you why. Because we have a lot more for you. See, folks, this is the podcast that's about podcasters. It's for podcasters and it's done by podcasters. Actually, this podcaster most of the time. And our guest today is, wait for it, amongst all these other things, she's a podcaster. That's right. Now, honestly, her intro is going to take about 15 minutes. Okay. So bear with me while I get through all this stuff because this lady is busy. She's doing like a ton of stuff. So we're going to give her credit for all of it. All right, folks, this is the place where we all come together to raise each other up. And this is the place where the rising tide raises all ships. So let's get sailing and bring in our guest today. All right. She is the founder of Crown Yourself. She's the CEO of Communication Queens. She's the certified high performance business coach. She's a visibility strategist. She's an international TEDx speaker. I got to see one of her talks. It was fantastic. And she's the best selling author of this book that I cannot wait to buy and read. I'm just going to tell you I haven't yet, but I'm absolutely ordering it as soon as we get off the show. Make every podcast want you. Okay. How to be so radically interesting you'll barely keep from interviewing yourself. Now, folks, I've got to find the secret to this. We're going to drill down on this today. We're going to try and get a little bit of the secret sauce. I'm going to try to do it for you. I'll do everything I can. Please welcome the host of the Crown Yourself podcast and the Communication Queen podcast, Kimberly Spencer. Kimberly, wow. How you doing?
I'm doing extraordinary. And you know what I really have to say, Rory? I so appreciate that you say my first TED talk. That one, as if there will be more, because there will be.
Well, all right. All right. I was actually just trying to cover my bases because I'm like, I know of one, but
There
you
is
were
only one at this point,
got it.
but there can be more.
Okay. I bet there will be. And honestly, I was thinking there might be. So I said, I got to hear one of her TED Talks.
We're going to put it out into the universe. Like that's what's happening.
We're going to manifest it 100%.
Absolutely.
I love that. Okay. And honestly, that was great. I loved your TEDx talk. I mean, you covered some
Thank
really
you.
tough stuff in that talk, and I was really impressed. Yeah, so we're going to have to talk about some other podcasts I'd love to have you on, but we'll do that later. Okay.
Sounds good.
I have 10. So, there's all kinds of stuff. To
Perfect.
talk Kimberly, my goodness, we could go anywhere with any of these topics. I've been talking to you for maybe 10 minutes beforehand, and I don't know if I've ever had so much fun in a pre-interview. You have so much energy and so much light and everything. You're just like, boom. And it's honestly, I'd love to just talk to you for a few hours, but we're here for a reason. We got to do a little podcast action. So tell everybody a little bit about who is Kimberly Spencer. Start wherever you'd like, and I'll just do my best to try and tag along.
So, my background has always been in storytelling. I was an expert at telling myself the story that I was fine when I wasn't. I learned how to rewrite that story as a in my early 20s when I was pursuing screenwriting. And after achieving my lifelong dream at the age of 24 and getting my first film that I co-wrote and got distributed by Lionsgate on Netflix, Danny Trejo starred in it. I said, like, why am I only 80% fulfilled? Lifelong dream. And I went off and I started looking for fulfillment. And prior to that, to support myself in entertainment, I had been a Pilates instructor for several years. And so I'd started my own Pilates studio. I supported myself as an entrepreneur. I'm a second generation entrepreneur. It just runs in my blood. I had the opportunity to jump on board an e-com company. That company I was with as president for 2 years. And then I got bought out 3 weeks before I got married. I then went and on my honeymoon because I had no idea what I was coming back to. I had no job. Didn't know what I was going to do. I was thinking of all of the things that I had, all the varied passions, storytelling, business, entrepreneurship, writing. And I leaped off the couch and I said, crown yourself. And my husband goes, what's that? And I was like, that's the name of my company. And he's like, what do you do? And I was like, I don't know, something like Marie Forleo. And so I started out in productive procrastination, buying all the equipment, doing all the things that you're supposed to do, posting on Instagram. I had no clients for a year and a half. And fast forward, like what truly was underneath that was my subconscious belief systems because of the buyout experience had been so contentious dealing with lawyers. they don't send you the nicest emails if you didn't realize if you're not on their side.
Mhm.
And because of that experience, I doubted everything. I doubted my capability to run a business. I doubted my self-worth. I doubted my capability. I had no business degree. I didn't go to college. Like, I was just scrappy and startup, and I had so much tenacity and audacity to just say, like, why not me? Like, I'm just going to go for it. And then I found out I was pregnant with my son. I said, that's enough of that. I'm of dabbling and pretending I don't know what I'm doing with business. I've run a successful e-commerce company. I had a successful brick and mortar studio. We're going to build a successful online coaching business. I went off, got certified in timeline therapy, hypnosis, and NLP. And I started growing my coaching practice. By 2018, I'd replaced my husband's income as the breadwinner. And then by 2019, I was in a podcast mastermind, and I was the only one without a podcast. And I was like, well, that's dumb.
I can't disagree with you there. I mean, yeah.
Right. And so I was like, maybe I should start a podcast. So I started a podcast. It was called The Princess and the Bee, and on all the bees that go on to becoming the queen of your life. So thematic, yes, on brand ish, but really, when we did our rebrand, and I think it was 2021, 2022, when I was like, why didn't we just name it Crown Yourself Podcast to begin with? Like, that was a dumb decision. I have the trademark. Like, why didn't we do that? That's just ridiculous. So pivoted to calling it the Crown Yourself Podcast. We ended up getting stuck in Australia. That's where my book was born, Make Every Podcast Want You, because in Australia during COVID, like, everything shut down. And my main form of lead generation, which had been prior to live events, I have a saying, when I'm live, I thrive. And live events couldn't do them, not only because of COVID, because of my visa. And so we're over there. It's my husband's industry is completely shut down as a voiceover actor. And I was like, well, it's on me to bring in more clients and customers. And we started looking down avenues, and we started it with our podcast, but we found our podcast was really good at converting clients that were already in our ecosystem. So they'd listen to the podcast, they'd binge several episodes, and then they would come in and book an Ascension Acceleration consult with me, and we'd go to town on their business. But it took that, like, that was a good nurturer and steward for on the fence. It wasn't bringing in new business revenue. And within 50 podcast interviews of going on 50 podcasts, I did $70,000 in new business revenue. And then within a few short months, I did $250,000 in new business revenue. And if you know, like, new business revenue is a lot harder to generate than like recurring. So I was like, I'm onto something. By 2022, we had moved back from Australia. We lost, in 2021, I gave birth to my second son, lost 3 family members, including my dad and my aunt, my grandma, and 2 family friends. And we moved back to support my mom, as she was dealing with the estates and all that, you know, happens with when people pass, and grief, and she was alone. So we moved back with my baby and my other baby. And I started the Communication Queens agency. And I said, let's see if podcast guesting works for other industries, not just coaching. And we've had bookkeepers, we had biohackers, we've had insurance agents, we've had all different types of businesses. We have entertainment executives, and leveraging the power of podcast guesting to get their voice out into the world, but not just to build brand awareness. Because I have a big saying across Communication Queens: brand awareness is BS without sales. So stop building your brand awareness. You got to build your sales pipeline. And we started to see traction with that. And then in 2024, I launched the book.
Wow. Okay.
In a nutshell.
Folks, you see what I'm talking about here, folks? I'm still stuck on, like, Danny Trejo, okay, in the Netflix thing. It's going to take me 10 minutes to catch up to that. Wow. Okay, quite the journey. Unbelievable, really. Sorry for your losses. That's brutal. There really is. But it sounds like you guys have kind of come out the other side, dealt with things. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's 2 kids. So
no, I have 3 now.
I was going to say, I know you have 3. So the third one came after that?
Yeah, my daughter was just turned 1.
Okay.
Like literally 2 days ago.
All right. Awesome. Congratulations on that. What a blessing.
Thank you.
That's fantastic too. All right. Yeah, I'm waiting on my first grandkid right now. So I'm all about it. It's awesome. Absolutely
I've
awesome.
heard grandparent life is amazing. I fully expect my grandkids in Texas here. Apparently, there's a thing where you call your grandparent your grandma Queenie. I'm like, oh, I'm down. That
Well, that
that's
works
gonna
for
be
you.
my grandma name.
That's on brand.
100%.
That's branding.
It's on brand.
That's
Yeah.
right. You're gonna be okay. You're gonna be just fine. Okay, goodness gracious. So all this stuff that you're talking about here, the COVID stuff. I mean, you've been going over your entire life is sort of like one adversarial issue after another. It sounds like you've got a story dating all the way back. I know you've come through a lot of that stuff. Um, COVID in Australia. I'm not sure there could have been a worse place to go through COVID, from what I've heard. They were pretty tough and
Well,
strict, weren't they?
you all got the news from Victoria. So just like not every state in the United States was as strict as some other states,
Mhm.
we were in the Florida of Australia.
Okay. Well, thank God for you, I
So
guess.
we got to live for 2 years by the beach. Like that's where I did my TED talk, was because I said, wow, I'm kind of uh in a blue ocean here. Like everything's open. Um, the borders weren't open. Those were completely like there was a wait list of 8,000 people to get back into the state. But as long as we didn't leave the state, aside from the initial lockdown, we had a very normal life
Good
living
for
by
you.
the beach. And that experience really taught us about the power of leaning into our intuition, because it was always both mine and my husband's dream to live and raise our family abroad and live in different countries. And I had it on my 2027 vision board, and we just manifested it earlier. And that experience was so life-giving and just trusting that we were exactly where we needed to be. Now, we couldn't go home for a funeral, like couldn't go home to see my dad, couldn't had to be advocating for him across 8,000 miles while he was alone in a hospital. But I got to just truly have a space where I had expansion. And because my relationship with my family had so many challenges, especially my dad, there's something really significant when you lose a parent that you had a complex relationship with, because it's not just the parent that passes, it is all the hopes that you had for what the relationship could be. And it's that, but having that distance from my family, I do believe attributed to a lot of my growth, um, and my maturation as a business owner, which was really valuable, helpful for my family, helpful for me to come home and be able to support my mom and help her with just navigating estates and getting her a buyout for the business that she had with my dad. Um, but that being over there was it was a godsend. Like it was people, we constantly got messaged. Like I got pregnant and I sent my husband to chef school because that was his dream. And apparently, like, even though there were no flights out, we had to do something for our visa. And I said, well, why don't we do a student visa? My husband was too old for us to do like a permanent residency. They don't want, he's 50, he's 19 years older than me. So they don't want people over 50 kind of mooching off of their healthcare system.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So unless I moved my business over, they were like, no, you're not a candidate really, but we could do a student. And we're like, okay, cool. We know then we'll be here for a few years. And we didn't know when the borders would open, but let's plan on a few years living here. And so he went to chef school. I got pregnant. I got to eat his homework. Genius.
Absolutely.
Strategy.
It sounds like you planned it from the beginning and it all happened
Master
just the way
plan.
just the way you planned it. I love it when a plan comes together. There she is. Okay. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so much here. It's just not even funny. I'm glad you said that about you because you mentioned to me your husband was like 57 and I was,
Mhm.
I'm 55, getting ready to be 56. I'm going, no way are you in your 50s. So
No.
I don't know how to ask that question. I'm just going to be like, you know what? We'll just let this go. It's cool. And the math wasn't mathing either. I'm going, wait a minute.
Yeah, he had like our first child he had when he was 49. And it
Wow.
was on a Netflix show too.
You can't drop that and not explain it.
It was
Sorry,
called it
but
was a show called Being Dad, and it was
okay.
about it's on Apple TV now, and it's about I think we're in episodes 1, 3, and 8 And it was really about fatherhood and like honoring fatherhood. It was with Chicken Soup for the Soul. And I thought it'd be a great promotional opportunity for my businesses. And they were very interested in not only my husband and my relationship, being 19 years age difference,
Sure.
and the struggles that he went through with his divorce that he had 7 years before me. But then they were also interested that he was becoming a first-time father at 49, and that I was that weirdo who wanted to do natural childbirth, um, like we discussed
Yeah.
before we hopped on the podcast.
Right. I have a little experience with that one. So yeah, I got it.
Yep.
But that's amazing. Okay. Is this something that you put together, this Netflix show? Or, I mean, how
No,
did you get involved with that? Did it have to do with you doing the Danny Trejo Netflix thing? I mean, you just know
no,
somebody, or how'd that work?
I'm very good at maintaining relationships. And I think that that's a strength in business that most
Mhm.
people undervalue. That's the whole reason why I wrote my book. Is most people treat a podcast interview like a one night stand rather than the potential to open the door for a thriving business relationship.
Love that. Can't wait to hear more about that. Okay. I let's just segue there. I mean, that's where you just took us. So let's go that way. She's your host today, folks, and I literally was just here for the ride. So I don't know what you were expecting when you got here, but throw it out the window. All bets are off. The book has had me intrigued since I heard of it. Okay. And it sounds like, I mean, you're very into podcast guesting. I mean, it sounds like you give a lot of importance to it, a lot more than the average person, which is exactly where I was going to go before you said that about the one night stand. Um, the book itself, I mean, it's a little tongue in cheek with the title in terms of, be so interesting, but it's also great advice to anybody who wants to come on as a guest, because so many people are like, here's my book. Here's my interview. I really don't even want to be here. Here's the title. Ask me what you have to ask me so I can go home.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why are you coming on the podcast then? I literally just did an interview, and not an interview, but an episode earlier today for Podcaster Nation. It was like a sort of a public service thing, how to be a better guest. And I just published it this morning. And then you're on here with this book going, maybe I
Divine timing.
should have read this book before I did the episode, because I bet there's some really good stuff in here. Where does this book come from? Where does this love for podcast guesting come from? Pull this all together for me.
So the love for podcast guesting came from the seismic shift that it had for my business with ease of lead generation. And because, being able to lock in that attraction phase, especially as a business owner, so many people, every business coach out there is throwing strategies up the wazoo. And anytime I hear that someone has referrals as their number one source of revenue, like lead generation for how they get their clients, I'm like, you're a fit for podcast guesting, because podcast guesting can be the open door, like the first date to a thriving business relationship. That does not mean you are looking at the podcast host like you're going to convert them, like you just immediately want to, like the guy at the bar who's just like looking at every woman he can to see who he can get into bed with. Like, that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing is we're looking at how can we build a relationship. And from relationships, referrals abound, but you have to have conversations create conversions. So I started having more conversations when I looked at the one common denominator in our income shift. It was, how many conversations could I have per week? And then where could those conversations go? And was I tracking those conversations? And once I started doing that, what gets measured gets managed. And we started scaling. And there is so much power in what can happen in a conversation. And so I wrote the book. I, 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 I have been a closeted author for a decade. I have had four books in my Scrivener file, half done, always wanting to be a solo best-selling author. I had, when I first, my business, I think it was 2016, I was part of a multi-author collaboration for a bestseller. But honestly, as a writer and as someone who loves words and language and story, I didn't feel like that book was really representative of me, because it was an interview-based book. It was like, okay, I did an interview, I talked, and then it was printed into a book, and it went on to be a bestseller. But is it still selling at bestseller? No. I was like, if I want to do something that leaves a lasting legacy, like I want a book. Like I love a book. And in 2023, like processing grief was so interesting for me because I was so honored to have a conversation with my aunt a few days before she passed.
Hmm.
And that is a conversation that will stick with me for the rest of my life because I got to see what someone is looking at when they are actually looking at the end of their life and what they regret. And by 2023, 2024, I started really asking myself that question of if I had 1 year left, what would I regret not actually doing and not becoming? And the answer was so clear. It was like, I would regret not becoming a solo best-selling author and getting at least one of my books published, printed out there in the world. And I had to have the book make sense because when you're smart as a business owner, you can talk yourself into all the other things that need to be done as a business owner rather than the thing that, because books don't create initial income up front, like
Right.
for the most part, unless you have an in present community and a launch strategy that's like a long-term launch strategy where that you're list building and wait list building as you're writing the book. For the most part, books don't make money up front. It is a long-term time investment. So I had to trick my business brain into saying, okay, I'm going to put aside these things to focus on purely writing something that's going to bring longevity and asset value to the business. And so I structured the book specifically for that purpose because I knew it would position both of my companies, me as a crown yourself for high performance business coaching and communication queens for our consulting and podcast guesting services. It would position both. And so I said, that's a smart business decision. I'm going to invest my time into that as a yearly goal. And so fast forward to 2024, the book comes out because I was like, oh, 2024, 2025 was a blur because I had a baby. But 2024, the book comes out. I'm 4 months pregnant with my daughter. I'm doing the book tour, the speaking tour. The book's up in Times Square, and I'm like, the amazing synchronicity of being able to experience it like that moment with my daughter inside me. Like I found out I was pregnant when I locked myself in an Airbnb for 4 days to finish the book, and I was like, I'm having some symptoms. I wonder. I found out I was like, so I have such a deep connection to that book and to these works of art that I've created. So much so that I decided to write a book a year for the next 13 years. So there we go.
Okay. And is this the first book of these 13 that's coming up?
That's the first one.
Okay.
The second one came out last year. It's called It's Just a Fart.
Okay.
It's a children's board. Yeah. Pivot, right?
The fact that anything surprises me at this point really shouldn't be a surprise. So I'm just like, whatever you got, keep giving it to me.
That book was a book that I wrote for my son when he was first born 8 years ago now, almost 9, because he was scared of his own farts. And so as I've had the success of Make Every Podcast Want You, and authors were buying my book, they're like, yeah, this strategy is great, but it's for a business book. It works if it's a book about personal development or business or marketing, but it doesn't work for me. I'm fiction. I'm a children's book author. And I'm that type of person where I really like to prove people wrong and then post about it on social media.
Again, not surprised. Okay. So that takes us to.
So it's just a fart is born.
Okay.
And it was also born out of being a mom. Like my kids know that I podcast. My kids but it's not a tangible thing that they can like touch. Right. And when I launched the book, that Make Every Podcast Want You, I saw my 3-year-old going into coffee shops holding my book, and he was so proud. He's like, "This is mommy's book. It's mommy's book. She launched it. It's here." And I was like, okay, I want them to also feel that pride. I want them to also feel championed. So they were consultants, obviously, on the fart book, with what drawings were funny, what drawings made you laugh, like what the cover should be. And then when it came out, like they got to experience the same joy. My 8-year-old got to go to New York with me to see it on a New York Times billboard. Like it was such a cool experience to be able to have him see the fruits of our labor together.
That's amazing. That really is. Whenever you can involve your kids like that, where it's learning experience and it's just gratifying like that, that's amazing. That's an amazing story. So congratulations on that too.
Thank you.
Not just on the book, but on the entire event. That's magnificent. All right, now there was two. Now I think I see three on the table
Oh yeah,
behind you. Okay,
yeah. That's the multi-author book, The Start
that's
Journey
the
to
first. I
Entrepreneurship.
got it.
That was
Got
the
it. Got
first
it.
one.
Got it. All right. Okay, so we're not counting the anthology in
It's
your
like
13,
it's there.
but that's not part of 13.
No, that's not part of the 13. That one was done back in 2016.
Got it.
So
So we have two
I
out of the
I
13 done.
yeah, I have two of the 13. I know the one that's going to be for this year and the one that's going to be for next year. And then we'll see what books come out next.
Have
But
you released what the one for this year is yet?
the one for this year is going to be called Rule Your Body. It is the one I started writing when I started my coaching business.
Mhm.
Um, I had a lot of clients from my Pilates business asking me how I fell in love with exercise from being an exercise induced asthmatic, from going through bulimia, how I completely transformed my body, my mindset. And it's back to my roots in the body. And I think now, having gone through postpartum for a third time, like I think now it's like and now with a lot of the culturally, there's a lot of shifts happening where like the skinny, super skinny is coming back in. I'm like, I think this book needs to come out now. It's time, and it's already mostly written, so it's also easier for me, quite frankly. I just need to get an editor. Like I need to do a few polishes and some edits, but I look at my capacity at this moment, and I was like, that's the book that's actually the most done and the smartest to set up for the next book, which is Money Bulimia.
Money bulimia.
Mm-hmm.
You do paint a picture. I said this
Thank
to you
you.
early, when I first met you. You do paint a picture. That's telling.
Yeah, money bulimia was what
Yeah.
I was struggling with when I was starting my coaching business. I was getting money in, it would go out right to operation expenses, and having coached entrepreneurs and leaders for the past decade, I have seen that cycle regurgitate itself. Strong choice of words, but
All
true.
right. Pun
Regurgitate
intended.
itself
Got it.
constantly. Um, with entrepreneurs and operational expenses. And I've seen it with podcasters where they're pouring their love and heart into their podcast, and then they're just pouring expenses back out without it being monetized, without having a strategy toward how that podcast can support their business. And like I said earlier, brand awareness is BS without sales. And so money
Right.
bulimia really is it's taking the processes that I will be releasing in Rule Your Body and applying them financially on what are the ways to think about money, what are the ways to think about your finances, what are the structures and systems that maybe you need in order to, and I say this not as a financial advisor or anything like that, but just looking at the energetics of understanding money and how I've recovered twice now from bulimia, first from physical, second from financial.
The Rule Your Body book, is that more physical or is
It's
that more
physical.
spiritual in terms of like having control over, that sort of thing?
I mean, spiritual always plays into the game.
Okay.
Like the mental, your subconscious mind runs your body. It's beating your heart right now. It's breathing your lungs. You're not thinking about it. And there's much when you learn about the subconscious mind and the power of what you say and how you say it, and the words and the thoughts that you think and the feelings that you feel, and how you literally can transform your relationship with your body. It's magical. And you can take those processes and apply them to money. You can take those processes and apply them to business. You can take those processes and apply them to communication and relationships.
Now, are those processes things you discuss in Rule Your Body?
No, that one's very strictly just for the body.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So where do we hear about all this other stuff? Is that going into a book sometime soon? Or is that just part of your coaching?
That's part of my coaching.
Got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Because with high performance business coaching and visibility strategy, like I look at the holistic picture of what my clients are trying to achieve. Most people want visibility, but they think that, oh, I got on a Times Square billboard once and like that's that. And people are going to be banging down the door for my podcast or my book. And I'm like, no, no, it's really about the press within the press and constantly reminding people that you're a badass and that you're amazing and that you're doing what you're doing and being strategic about how you're framing it from the perspective of letting your story be a lighthouse so that you can guide people, like my TED Talk said, of being that warrior for possibility, being that testimony that if you can do it, I can too. If you can have a successful podcast, I can too. If you can make money from your book, I can too. If you can make money in business, I can too.
Hmm. Love it. Okay. Now, I see you kind of like laying the different blocks of the foundation here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it all makes sense. Maybe it's just for people in our business. I don't know. But I mean, I can clearly see these foundational blocks. You lay them out so that you can stand on those and move vertically. And I
Mm-hmm.
kind of get that there. What I'm dying to know now is how do the two podcasts work within this foundational apparatus? What do you use them for? How are they best utilized? And what do you do with them?
So initially, the Crown Yourself podcast was building conversations. I wasn't quite sure what I was doing. I was talking to pretty much anyone.
Best way to start.
Like leaders. I was like, cool, you're an awesome business leader who's at six figures. Okay, cool. I'm like, come on my show. I would have clients on my shows. And then I started to look at like, wow, we're in the top 2% of podcasts. Like we've produced almost 300 episodes. Like we're ratcheting up like what the standards are. And we started raising our standards for who we invited on, um, and looking at who do I want to actually have conversations with. Like, I don't want to be bored and have like, here's another sales coach telling you how to sell. And I'm like, I like, I, I made a post that went viral, I think last year. I said, as a top 2% podcast, I am no longer accepting those who just want to empower women because I'm like, you got to show me how. You got to show me what you did. You got to give me some data, give me some facts. If you say I want to empower women, then I don't know if you actually are doing that or if you have some numbers behind you that back you.
Wow.
And
Awesome. Okay.
thank you.
Yeah. Good for you. Please continue. But I just had to say
Yes.
that.
I mean, it's one of the sections in my book about building credibility and building a badass bio is like, what are some numbers that actually paint a picture about your success, about what you do? And it doesn't have to be, I've helped 5,000 women recover from an eating disorder. It could be like one of our clients, she has helped 3,000 women in educating them financially, 3,000 single mothers, educating them financially on how to look at profit and loss and how to look at finances and balance their checkbook and look at and have a financial education. I was like, that's female empowerment. Like, I need to see data that you've actually done something. I need to see a track record. I don't want to hear your like, I'm all for sharing wants, dreams, desires, but don't tell me that you're gonna produce a book. Like, I need someone who's actually produced a book or two and then is producing more. Like, what's your next book? You have a track record of publishing books. I now know that I now trust you that you're going to come on the show and actually eventually deliver a book that I know my audience will buy. I think that there's power when you look at your life through the lens of numbers, and not to say that you have to like prove yourself or qualify it or like tout how much money you're making, because I think that's kind of bro marketing gross, kind of like throwing around like how much you weigh. But I do think like there are numbers that you can stand by. Like, I've been in the top 10% of female owned businesses for uh, over 5 years now, making over six figures. Most female owned businesses don't make six figures. And being able to be in business for over a decade and consistently and stay there, like that, I just beat out 80% of my like business owners. Like, so there are numbers that you can stand by. If you are the, first kid to graduate from college, if you are the person who, where you're the first entrepreneur, if you're the first person to heal from trauma in childhood and you're the generational curse breaker, great. Tell me what the curses were that you broke. Like, I need to hear specifics. And I think too many people pitch in generalities because it's floofy industry language that doesn't actually paint a specific picture.
Hmm. Okay. I love it. And I love to hear that you're discerning this stuff. I think every podcaster, I think they want to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's still such a almost a desperate need to have content that people feel like they have to take anybody who comes on sometimes. But I love when a podcaster gets to that point where they start discerning who's coming in the door.
Mm-hmm.
Who gets to sit in that chair. You know what I mean, across from you. We all need content, but by the same token, it should mean something. So I love that. And it sounds like you're looking for what might be a little bit of maybe conversion or sales or something of that nature because you're trying to raise your numbers across the platform here.
Well, and from the audience, like, so I'm also looking for mentors and up leveling my caliber and my circle of friends and colleagues. I
Yeah.
mean, you are like the five people you most surround yourself with. So I want to surround myself with people who are growth minded, who are going for big, audacious, hairy goals, who are seeking that those goals are in alignment and for a higher purpose.
Mhm.
And so I'm selective based on that I was going to say credibility, but that's not the right word. Um
Criteria?
Criteria, there's the word. Thank
Thought
you.
I'd throw it out there. All right.
Oh, postpartum brain is still kicking in.
All right. Your
um
show. Go ahead.
the and then communication queens, we looked at where our audience was, and most of our audience was authors. And we pivoted
Hmm.
from it being more of an interview style show of interviewing industry experts. We still have industry expert on, but for the most part, I said, well, why don't I take the value of coaching and bring it to the podcast and give people the opportunity to share about their books and their business, but also look at like where in their marketing strategy are they maybe going awry? Like where could they have, improved? What could they have been looking for? And thus demonstrate my skill set as a coach and strategist. And maybe that converts into a client, maybe that converts into a referral. I know it always converts into a book, someone promoting the book, because we started giving away to all of our podcast guests a free digital copy of the book. And because I want to support our guests in shining, in being truly amazing podcast guests and showing up and having that podcast work for them. So I think if you're like, for example, if you're showing up with low lighting, if you're showing up with a funky mic and it's like your first podcast episode, it's like you got to time to step up, like turn pro. One of my communication queen students, she booked her first podcast interview before she had her mic, and she's like, I need to buy my mic. Amazon next day delivery. But that's the thing, is like it comes
Yeah.
from raising your standards. And I said, if you want to go on more high caliber show, they will have standards that you have good lighting, that you have a good mic, that you have backing to your bio and some meat to it.
Love it. Love it. I'm feeling pretty good about the episode I put out earlier today because you're saying some of the same things I said, which is great. But
Awesome. Glad to
there's,
validate you.
well, I appreciate it. I need all the validation I can get. So I'm 55, all right? I'm not like in my 30s, running around like you. Give me a break. So anyway, the book though, I think is fascinating because you're talking about guesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you have two podcasts. You're a discerning host in terms of who you let on. And now we're writing a book about how to get on.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of curious as to the chicken and the egg thing. Did you start discerning and then say, hey, I need to teach people how to get on? Or were you like, I'm already teaching people how to get on, and the guests I'm getting are not up to my own standards in my book, so I need to cut back? Kind of which came first?
That's a great question. We started being more discerning as I was guesting on more podcasts and realizing the caliber of our podcast of what we brought to the table.
Hmm.
Because, I think we've all been on those podcasts that it's just a little off and awkward. And you're wondering if you should talk or what the question is, or it turns into a pick your brain session. So,
You're killing me right now. You're absolutely killing me because I know exactly what you're talking about. So does everybody else who's listening. Well done. Okay. Yes, I think it's safe to say that we've all kind of had that
and
experience.
and I think when you recognize that and you're like, well, damn, I got a really good show. I've got a great show. I have great guests. I make sure to position them as best as possible. I have had
Yeah.
7 and 8 figure entrepreneurs onto my show that have been like, oh my God, your podcasting prep process was the best I've seen, as far as like the emails that I have for going out and like making sure that they have like, here's like, I let them know, I'm like, here's your pre-podcast production checklist, like go through this checklist. Here are some episodes on what your CTA could be, that could be a great CTA for your episode so that you really stand out and shine. Here is a copy of my book, so go like flip to this page and here's how you position yourself and how you can tell more stories on the podcast so that you can convert and our audience will relate to you more so you can get more conversions. Like, I want you to win on my show.
Okay. All right. Got it. And the book, can you give me any of the secret sauce that's in the book? Give me maybe an example of something.
So, one of the things that I do with many of my clients is we create a story log of case studies that are of their clients' successes that they can drop in
Hmm.
about their clients who are awesome and amazing, that demonstrate their credibility, bypassing cognitive dissonance. So, what happens is we have 4 sales objections. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't know if it'll work for me. I don't know if I don't know if I'm ready for it. And if we can look at those 4 objections and leverage your story to say, I had one client. She was so funny. She was a bookkeeper, and she's like, I hate all my clients right now. It's tax season. And I was like, well, let's put that aside. Um, who could you actually love on? And she was telling me about this one business that she got their numbers in order, and then she was able to support them in like opening up a second location. Like, they at first thought they were going to go out of business within a few months. And then she got them to the point where they could open up a second location because they were so profitable. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. That's going in your story log. And then I had another client who was an executive producer, and he had this great story, and he's done like all the animations shows that are for all the kids. Like, he's been the producer behind many of them. And we were talking about like, well, what about the story about you getting onto the show, or what about the story like of going from welfare to producing a $1 billion franchise show reboot? And that, adding that into his bio, he was like, oh, that's a different story, and it created a lot more audience buy-in. And I think that when you can create this story log, what happens with stories is you're able to bypass cognitive dissonance. What happens is when people are like, oh yeah, it worked for her, it's not going to work for me, versus if you say, I have this client and this was a thing and this is what they experienced, and they were struggling with this and that, and then we got them to this and that. Like, I have a client who had a dead list of like 900 people. Um, Literally was launching this business, was like, he was training celebrants, which is like, if you in America, we don't really know what that is. It's like people who give funerals and weddings.
Hmm.
And he had a professional training celebrancy business, and he went off, and by the end of our coaching, he was able to go and buy himself, like, fulfill his childhood dream and buy himself a plane. His business is now
Wow.
the #1 in the world for celebrant training. Like, that's a case study. Now suddenly you're like, oh, she might know something about business coaching. Like, she might know how to help me.
As a listener, you just got my attention. You just made me wake up and go, wait, what? And now I'm hitting backward on the recording a little bit so I can catch what I just sort of slept through. And I'm going, hold on. Okay, got it. So you're catching the attention of the listener and validating everything they're saying.
In NLP, it's a hypnotic language pattern called metaphors. Now, as I wrote in my book, as my editor pointed out, she's like, this is not an actual metaphor. And I was like, no, 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 no. It's a metaphor in NLP. And because metaphors mirror the story arc of your ideal customer. And like in the example of my client who bought himself a plane, fulfilling his childhood dream, most of my clients come to me, they're at a decent level of success. They're around 6 figures to 7 to 8 figures, like starting around 6 figures, but they have ambition and they've got enough success under their belt to where they know how to do some great things in their business, but they know that they want to get to that next level. And they know that next level also involves fulfillment. And that next, it's not just about chasing achievement anymore. It's not just about chasing numbers because, like, oh, wow, I hit 6 figures. Oh, wow. Okay. Now what? Okay. I did that. Now what? And so I get a lot of clients in that now what phase. And so being able to share a story that guides people through the story arc of like, here's the problem. Here's the beliefs that were there. Here's the emotions that were being felt. Here's the thoughts that were being thought, maintaining whatever client confidentiality that you're able to. When you can share that and then share the other side, suddenly that gets someone's attention where it's like, oh, she may be my Yoda to my Skywalker.
Look at you with the Star Wars references now.
I have 2 young boys and a nerd of a husband.
I mean, again, every corner there's more surprises with you. Okay, got it. I love it. I really do. I'm intrigued by this book, and by the ideas in it, and by everything you keep saying. The NLP sounds like it's been a very helpful piece to this whole puzzle for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Learning how the mind works and how the communication between our conscious and our unconscious, or some call it our subconscious mind,
Mhm.
that congruence in communication, and the fact that your subconscious mind's always listening to the language that you speak. It's always listening. And so if you're saying things that are hurtful, harmful, oh my gosh, my podcast isn't growing, why isn't it growing? Well, your subconscious mind is going to go, hey, let me figure out why it's not growing. Here's why it's not growing. It's not growing because you have, childhood trauma from when you were 6 years old and you were told to shut up and be quiet. It's not growing because that bully that pushed you into a corner and said you shouldn't women should be seen and not heard. It's here. Let me find all the reasons for you. Versus when you learn to communicate not just outwardly to an audience, but also internally, and look at what you're saying to yourself on a regular basis and the story that's going. When you change your story, you change your life.
Okay, so yeah, the NLP has something to do with it. Sounds good.
A
Got
little
it.
bit.
All right, everybody. Wonderful. We've talked about neuro-linguistic programming on here before, so I think people kind of get what NLP is, at least in concept.
Mm-hmm.
The way you're using it seems to be pretty brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah, really, I'm a fan of this right now. I told you beforehand, I have a feeling you and I could sit here and talk for hours, and I'm already on that path now. I knew I was going to run out of time. I just knew it. And going into this, I'm like, there's no hope. So let's just see
I
where it
told
goes.
you brevity is not my specialty.
That's because you have so much to say. That's worthwhile, and that's awesome. So, all right, I got to get in my corny question though, okay? Because I mean,
Oh, let's do it.
I've got to maintain the tradition of this, and I can't not ask it here. Plus, I have no idea what answer I'm going to get from you at this point. It could be anything. Really simple stuff. So, when it comes to doing the podcast, not everything else that you're doing, and I realize you have a zillion other things, but when it comes to doing the podcasts, plural, what is it about the podcast that you love the most? And what is it about the podcast that you just hate the most?
I love the most my team.
Hmm.
My team that does the end-to-end production, the back end, the SEO, the publication, the editing, the social posts, we got that system dialed in. I love my team. They are pros at this. They take feedback so amazingly. Marie and Jell, you rock. I love you guys. Like, they have been with me for years, and that is, yeah, that's what I love, is the
Awesome.
support that I have from the podcast.
Okay. That's half the question.
Oh,
The other half of the question is, what part of doing your podcast do you hate the most?
like I've gotten better with like grace as a recovering perfectionist. I've gotten better with grace and no shows. And like, but I am super protective of my time, especially as a mom of three young children running two businesses and two podcasts. Like, I am very protective of my time. I am very okay with grace as long as it's and communication. Just be open, honest. I always give people one pass. I understand, as a parent, diaper explosions happen, blood things happen, and urgent care runs occur, blizzards happen, and you got to pick your kid up from school. I get it as a parent. I think parenting has given me a lot of grace. Second time, though, it ain't gonna happen.
There it is. I mean, the line is drawn. That's that. You get one shot. All right, good. I love that. All right, that's perfect. Where can everybody reach you? And where can they find out more about you?
If you love this episode and you love podcasts, come on over to crownyourself.com/podcast and build out your conscious leadership and your empire building strategies with me. If you're like, I want to know how to be a better podcast guest, I want to get on shows, then go on over to makeeverypodcastwantyou.com, grab my book. There are 10 free resources that come with the book, including a list of free Facebook groups that you can get in for that promote podcasts, that you can go on podcasts, that you can find guests from, services like Podmatch, which is where Rory and I met. But also our podcast Trello board that will give you end-to-end guest podcasting management. So you actually have a system in place, because frustration is just due to a lack of systems. And so if you don't have a system for guesting in place, I have built it for you. And it's a free resource that comes with the book.
Absolutely amazing. All right. I love this. I've got to check this book out. Absolutely. Let's check it out. The book, Make Every Podcast Want You, How to Be So Radically Interesting You'll Barely Keep From Interviewing Yourself, is the book. All right. I do have one more question for you. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. What is your best advice to podcasters out there who are not quite where you are yet?
90% of podcasters give up after 10 episodes.
Hmm.
And I think that's really sad. I think that when you allow yourself to get curious and ask for support and ask for guidance and strategy from people who have paved the way for you or in advance and who are further ahead, get curious, ask questions, pay for a consult. Like, your podcast can work for your business. Your podcast can work as a monetizable asset for you. It can be a massive authority building asset for your company, for your personal brand. It can build relationships. You can have relationships and friendships with mentors, people that you would love to have met that you never would have had an opportunity to meet had you not had a podcast. But you won't have that if you stop and you quit. So your success is inevitable so long as you keep asking questions, stay curious, and seek out support from those who are farther ahead where you would like to be.
Very well said. Very well said. All right, folks, if you missed out on that, just hit rewind, go back, listen to that again, because that was fantastic advice. All right. The founder of Crown Yourself, CEO of Communication Queens, the host of Crown Yourself podcast, the host of the Communication Queens podcast. And one more time, because we just got to say it again. Because one of these days I'm going to actually get this title without having to read every single word. The author of the book that I cannot wait to read, Make Every Podcast Want You, How to Be So Radically Interesting. You'll barely keep from interviewing yourself. I think I do actually interview myself once in a while. But folks, awesome book. Go check it out. Kimberly Spencer. Kimberly, you are a force of nature, and I am just so glad that I got to meet you. I loved having you on the show, and thank you for being here.
Same. Thank you so much, Rory. And
Awesome.
I love your podcast voice. You got a voice for radio. Like you nailed it.
Thanks for
You're at the
that. I
right.
appreciate it.
You're very aligned in your career.
I appreciate that very much. All right, folks. So we got to get the voice going now. Anyway, that's been another awesome episode of the Podcaster Nation. Folks, this is the podcast. It's about podcasters. It's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. This is the place where the rising tide truly raises all ships. So keep sailing.